I went to see a movie recently called The Untouchables, and it had a fellow in there who was playing Al Capone's part, and they had him quoting something that I know Al Capone never said because it was Willie Sutton that said it. Willie Sutton, the bank robber, I'm told, said that you can get farther in this world with a kind word and a gun than you can with a kind word alone. And, in his time, Willie, really hit the nail on the head. Except that I think what we keep finding out, and we find it out in our daily personal lives, in our relations with our family, with our customers, and I think the United States learned a few things in Vietnam, and Russia is learning it in Afghanistan, that force is really not the way that you're going to succeed. We're going to succeed with influence and persuasion and motivation. But what I want to share with you is what I think I have learned about motivation and manipulation. You see, both motivation and manipulation have to do with getting some folks to do things without using force. There's a fundamental difference. You see, in motivation, we persuade others to do things that will further their ends. In manipulation, we persuade them to do things to further our ends. Now, let me tell you what I have learned. The most dangerous managers are those manipulators that are so skilled that the manipulated people feel motivated. Until one day, they suddenly discover they've been knocking themselves out, and they're getting nothing from it, and it's all going to someone else. And then, ladies and gentlemen, things come to a halt in a great big hurry. Let me share with you what I think I have learned are the key elements in motivation. And I didn't invent this. I learned it from successful people. But I have come to believe that in a motivated organization, there are 4 questions to which there are clear answers at all levels of the organization. Question number 1, what is expected around here? Now, I'm not going to elaborate because, like I said, I'm told you're fast learners. Question number 2, how am I doing? Feedback. People got to have feedback or the life goes out of it. Question number 3, what's in it for me? If I understand what's expected and I do the job, then what happens? And the 4th question is the one that I really find the most interesting. If I am in trouble, where can I go for help? Ladies and gentlemen, I have found and I've come to believe that when those 4 questions are answered in an organization, you are on the road to having motivated people. One way that it was explained to me, what is it you're really seeking, was a little story about 3 people working on a construction site. They were all 3 doing exactly the same job. A passerby came by, asked the first one, "What are you doing?" And he answered, "I am breaking rocks." He asked the second one what he was doing, and the answer was, "I am earning my living." When he asked the third one, he answered, "I am helping to build a temple." You see, it isn't what people do, it is how they view their role as part of a bigger picture. And insofar as we can get our people to feel that they are a part of something bigger that makes a contribution to make the world a better place to live and an opportunity for them to make a difference, then I believe you have achieved true motivation. Well, now let me just very quickly share some experiences with you out of our recent history that sort of, lead me to the conclusion that it works. Please crank yourself back with me to the spring of 1981. I had just accepted this job. I had never been in the automobile business, and my wife Sheila and I came to the United States and saw our first sports car race. It was a race in Sebring, Florida, a 12-hour race, and competing in that race was a Porsche 935, which was a fire-breathing, 750 horsepower turbocharged monster. I'd never seen anything like it. There were 15 of those cars in the race, and they completely dominated the race. One of them ultimately won, and I went back to Germany, and I was all fired up. I tend to get kind of emotional about these things, so I got the whole racing department together, everybody that had anything to do with it, and I told them about what I had observed in Sebring. Well, I think you can imagine a lot of these folks were quite apprehensive, about this new American boss who didn't know anything about cars. And when they heard my dissertation, well, now they knew they were in trouble. I asked them, in my excitement, I said, excuse me, tell me, what is the most important race of the year? They said, well, Mr. Schutz, that is the 24-hour race in Le Mans, France. I said, wonderful. What are we doing to compete? Well, they said, we're readying some cars. They're called 924 turbos. And then they told me about some of the problems they still had to solve. The race was 62 days from the day of this meeting. And then I asked them, tell me, what are our chances of winning? Well, they said, Mr. Schutz, you really don't seem to understand anything. There is no chance of winning. These cars are not powerful enough to compete with the race cars that will be there, but that's not the point of this whole exercise. We're trying to demonstrate the reliability of the production Porsches that we sell every day. And I said, now, folks, just a minute. Let me explain something. As long as I am president of this company, we will never go to a race without the clear objective of winning. Now, since I don't know how that's done, this meeting is now adjourned, and you will come back at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning and explain to me how you are going to win that race. Now, what I had just done, you see, is I had given them permission to perform. And a very interesting thing happened. You see, it turned out, first of all, they knew how to win that race. And in fact, had many discussions in during the coffee breaks and in drinking that beer that those folks drink. They were, they had talked about how they would win that race if they only had the opportunity. So they came back the next morning and they had all the answers. They said, Mr. Schutz, we have 2 cars in the museum. They're called 936s. They won the race a few years ago, but of course are now obsolete. But we also developed an engine that was supposed to compete at Indianapolis before you came, but then that program was canceled on us, but we saved all the pieces. And if we take those engines and put them in those cars with a transmission out of a 917, I had no idea what a 917 was. I know today. But they said we take a transmission out of a 917, we put all that together, we might just have something. Well, I said, look, let's not sit here talking about it. Let's go to work. Well, they went to work, and Mr. Bott, who is head of our engineering and research, came up to me after the meeting and he said, Mr. Schutz, this work that you just authorized, it's going to be very expensive, and we don't have any money in the budget for it. Well, I said, what do you think it'll cost, Mr. Bott? Well, he said, probably cost 350,000 Deutschmarks. Well, I said, if you win that race, nobody will ever ask us what it cost. If you lose it, we've got a problem. Well, on that basis, you see, on that basis, we went to work, and the reason I love motorsport as a management learning tool is that things happen so quickly. You see, when you start to address the issue of winning a race, it's a little bit like Coach Valvano's basketball. When the weekend comes, you find out whether you're making any progress. You don't have to wait 3 or 4 or 5 years, to see if a product is going to be successful. A few days later, my telephone rang. I picked up the phone, and a man's voice says, Mr. Schutz, you don't know me. My name is Jackie Ix, and I retired a few years ago, but If the rumors I'm hearing are true, I would like to come back and drive my old car again.